Welcome back to Plague Scythe Studios, everyone. Ryan here. Today we are sound checking some cabinets and some speakers and some microphones, at least the digital representations of all those things, as we have several cabinet impulse response packs from the same creator of the mighty 1111 amplifier plug-in, OTTO Audio. The first thing that needs addressed before we get rolling here today is a difference between this video and the 1111 review. In the latter, or actually chronologically, the former case, I outright purchased that plugin with my own money, so I kind of had a more scrutinous lens looking at that product. Whereas with all the impulse responses I'm demonstrating today, they were sent to me free of charge as review samples. So once again, shout out to Reed of OTTO Audio. Big thanks to him for making this video possible. With that said, this is not a sponsored video. I'm not getting paid for this. In fact, out of pure transparency, I turned down a sponsorship because I thought it could potentially have some conflicts of interest for content going forward, though I don't really review impulse responses for reasons I'll get into here in a bit. But nonetheless, I would have rather taken that potential expenditure and pass it on to those that could use it more. And in this case, it actually manifested in another Plague Scythe Studios discount code. This one's real. Use this at the link in the description below if you would like 20% off of any of these products. If you like what you hear, again, out of pure transparency, I'm not getting any kickback or anything like a referral program. And if you're interested in the OTTO CABS Volume 1 pack, you can actually use the code NONEHEAVIER for 50% off. Back to you, past me. If there's something you like out of here, you're trying to fill a hole in your impulse response collection or get closer to a sound that you hear in this video, then there you go. It's probably the best time to buy. But with that said, the reason I don't generally look at impulse responses in a focused manner in a video format, at least, is, in my opinion, they're like the most subjective part of the signal chain. They are the most important, oftentimes. You take similar amplifiers of comparable tightness and saturation and frequency response. To me, the cabinet impulse response in a digital signal chain, equivalent to the cab and the microphone and preamp, all that good stuff in the analog world, that is really the most important thing, because it's the final filter where all of your signal chains are going through. And to me, it's hard to say, well, this is definitively the best one. This microphone combination, this is what you always want to use. And that's just simply not a statement that I can make, because it is always so situationally dependent, and depending on what mix you're going after, what amplifier you're using, or if you just, you're hell-bent on using this cabinet, well, depending on the rest of your mix elements, maybe this speaker and these two microphones and this preamp is the secret sauce. And maybe on a different day, if you're using a different amplifier, it could be completely 180 and a totally different cabinet configuration. So it's not something I like to say, this impulse response vendor always does better than this one, and this cabinet's always better than this one. It's just kind of a, tone by tone basis. If I were to speak about the impulse response market as a whole, though, I think you'll find a lot of overlap between different vendors. There are plenty of different companies out there, and even individual efforts that do try to cover different use cases and gear that other people aren't, and I really like that. I honestly think capturing this kind of stuff is really important for the historical preservation of sound, honestly. So I'm glad there's people doing that kind of work to be able to recreate this stuff digitally. But you'll also find that for a lot of the big name players, there's a lot of the same kind of cabinets, same kind of 5 to 10 microphones, same kind of placement, and probably a very similar style flat power amp and fairly neutral microphone preamp to capture a lot of this stuff. And that does reflect what's used in the studio oftentimes, and especially with stuff like the neutral preamps and neutral power amps to drive the speaker cabinets. It helps ensure that it's, the most pure sound out of the cabinet, and it's going to pair with whatever gear you're using it with, whether it's a real amp through a load box or a, digital amp modeler or a VST plugin. And that's great. But a lot of the times they all start to sound a little samey to me, especially once you start diving through the dozen to 20 selections out of one speaker cab, one speaker, one microphone. Maybe those first 3 or 4 impulse responses are functionally the same, minus something that could have been achieved with a small cut and boost and EQ. So that's the kind of stuff that I find to be a little fatiguing and is so situationally dependent that I have a hard time saying it's good or bad, really, but I'm just generally not interested in that kind of approach. On the other hand, OTTO Audio's approach, in my opinion, sticks out a little more from the crowd, both descriptively and, more importantly, sonically. So taking the Warrior cab pack here, which, by the way, is like the most genius use of the original logo I've ever seen. It took me way longer than I want to admit to get it, but I really want to do that to my cabinet now. Apparently, the IR capturing signal chain took half a year to nail down through A/B testing 25 plus mics, a dozen different power amps, and all summed together with something that uses Neve transformers. And that's a dense sentence and says a lot about what I find interesting about these IRs. First of which, the microphone selection is kind of nuts. It boiled down to about 17 for this particular cabinet model, and you see a lot that you simply are not going to get in other impulse responses out there. Of course, you have your standbys, right? But there's some even modified SM57s in here. Of course, this doesn't have every one of them in the world that I would like to hear, but this alone is something that I think really fills the void of a lot of your more generic microphones that see use in the studio. As someone who's shot many impulse responses of their own cabinets, the gear that comes before and after is what's really interesting to me in these cabinet packs. For me, anytime that I'm trying to capture a cabinet, it's basically exclusively with a solid state power amp going into an extremely transparent microphone preamp, because for my use cases, I generally don't want any coloration. I want the amplifier and the load box to be doing its thing, and I want the mixing plugins or any other outboard gear I'm using it to make that stuff happen on the microphone preamp side. On something like the FM9 or Axe-FX3, there's a preamp section in the cabinet block where you can actually add some saturation and some EQ to kind of mimic those overdriven microphone preamp tones that you'd hear. And even when it's not fully overdriven, that added bit of bite and saturation is oftentimes the missing link between a raw sounding guitar signal and one that is basically CD ready, for lack of a better descriptor. So for this, it's taken a bit of a different approach where it's kind of, as far as the frequency response is concerned, going after something that's a little more mix ready and live sounding. While the analog signal path in play here isn't exactly going to be adding distortion or saturation to your cabinet IR, because you can't do that in an impulse response. It's not how that works. It very much could be contributing to some added harmonics and frequency content that wouldn't have been there otherwise, in a way that would have been shot more transparently. So there is a good chance that some of that final production sound we associate with it is baked into the IR, which is interesting to me because that means it should be more mix ready to a lot of our ears. Since in the worst case scenario, that can kind of be emulated with other plugins or indeed other modeling effects, the really big one for me is the power amp in use. And they won't tell us, which I get it. But I kind of wish I knew, because I think this is the real star of the show here, because all of the impulse responses have a huge amount of low end, more than basically anything I've ever shot when it comes to regular 4x12s. And it doesn't sound artificial or inflated. It just sounds big, like in the room big. And all of that together creates a final product that, playing through studio monitors especially, sounds way more like a mic'd speaker cab in another room, and you're getting all of that variation and saturation. And I really hope this is a phenomenon that this damn YouTube video captures, because I'm a little afraid that it won't. But sitting here in this room, I've never heard any of my direct application products, whether it be like a tube amp through a load box or a VST plugin, sound bigger, more larger than life, especially comparing these, the most like for like impulse responses to ones I've shot. It's kind of no contest. As far as this stuff that I've made before, going after a particular sound, there might be stuff that is closer. Maybe the ones I've made for Tone Engineer sound more like an album if you're going for that sound. But as far as just baseline, holy shit, that's a good sounding cabinet. I'm really impressed by the ones that I've been able to directly compare. And that secret sauce is apparently baked into all the ones on offer. And much of what is on offer is fairly compelling, despite there being some vanilla selections, though, like I said before, because that whole signal chain and the microphone selection is basically present across all of these, at least to some extent, then I think it even makes the more basic cabinet still stand out in the crowd, and you're getting something unique as a result. I'm not saying that if you already have a Warriol 1960s style cabinet impulse response pack and you're happy with it, you're probably not going to gain a ton by purchasing this one. But if you're starting from scratch, this might be a good place to start with. And you have some other kind of tried and true stuff like the M35A OS cabinet. A lot of us people like those. So again, kind of vanilla, but I think it's a great place to start. And I'm not going to be, throwing a fit over having more choices. The only one that you cannot purchase individually at this time, I believe, is one of the cabinet models in the Volume 1, which include a bass cabinet that I think is rather great sounding. The AMPG 810, probably guess what that is, but everything else can be purchased individually, which is what I do want to see. Currently on sale, without my sale price, of course, at about $15 a cabinet, a little more for some of the newer offerings that have more microphones. I think that's right around the price that it probably should be. And given the selection that's on choice, it's pretty competitive. So for the demonstrations you're going to hear and have heard, there's going to be a variety of guitars and other stringed instruments on display using different types of gear, including the 1111 plug-in, because given that it comes with about, 15, 16 cabinets, I really wanted to see how some of these would pair with it. And of course, you're not limited to just OTTO audio plugins, are you, when it comes to impulse responses? So we're going to be hearing different types of modelers and tube amplifiers as well. The common denominators being, once again, it's going to be from one of these cabinet packs. The Volume 1 collection includes a lot of these individual ones here. There is the Black Pack, which includes some samples from the Volume 1 as well as some unreleased cabinets. So a couple samples of those we'll be listening to, which I think is rather exciting. Look forward to hearing those in a more developed capacity. And then there are, of course, these newer separate cab packs which aren't available in a volume yet, like the Ionic and the Kurt Hammer. So we'll be trying out one or two, or maybe more, from each of these selections and see how they sound. So final thoughts then, coming from the perspective of someone that owns thousands, if not tens of thousands of impulse responses at this point and uses like 30 of them. The initial offerings from OTTO Audio don't exactly jump off the page at me at first glance, right? You know, it's like a 1960 style cabinet. You've got the big American vintage 30 loaded oversized cabinet. Those are things that a lot of people offer and have offered for a long time and even for free. And so a lot of people are probably going to have stuff that does that role in their collection. Is it going to be the same quality level? Maybe not. Maybe it works for them though. I think there's great opportunities here though with this stuff that you don't see captured every day, like these Sun 412SR tower speakers. You've got the Kurt Hammer, the Ionic, you know, a lot of the stuff that's a little more new to the space. And then that kind of opens up the door and lets people hear the, shall we say, the OTTO secret sauce that's prevalent throughout all of these cabinet IRs. Coming from this at the angle of someone that's kind of starting new, collecting impulse responses or looking for something to produce with, I think there's a really strong argument to look at this maybe first, at least top three. Obviously, check out free stuff, other vendors that have things on offering. But if you watch this YouTube channel, if you were as impressed as I was with the 1111 for the purity of heavy sound and distilling a signal chain down into a no-nonsense kind of thoughtless, just pick something and make it sound good kind of approach, I haven't really found something I like better in any measurable way. There are other packs I really like from a lot of the major players in the space. But as far as just throwing on different impulse responses, hearing something that is measurably different, but still kind of logically, progressively different as you go through each microphone position and selection, I really like the workflow of this. And in fact, I'm so impressed with the way they sit in a mix and how authentic they sound, how true to life they sound. I'm using these on my next musical endeavor, definitely on the bass guitar and on at least the rhythm guitars. I might mix some of my own stuff in there as well, but you're going to hear some stuff from OTTO on my EP that's coming up. So I think that, if nothing else, is a bit of a seal of approval for me. If you're looking to take advantage of that discount code, the obvious value winner for me, if you're looking to just buy one, is the Black Pack, since it has 46 different impulse responses across upcoming cabinet samples, as well as the ones that were already released in full-fledged form, and they're kind of hand-selected microphone mixes. So you should get a pretty good, accurate first impression of what OTTO Audio is going for with these cabinet packs. Additionally, with the 50% off discount code, the Volume 1 pack starts to look pretty competitive. So if you're considering more than 2 or 3 of the ones included in there, you might as well spring for it and get the rest at basically the same cost. If you do plan to splurge on just, you know, one particular cabinet, then you can still expect a fairly logical and well thought out naming scheme. It's not overly technical. It doesn't really matter what they are. You have, a version plus 1, 2, 3 cap, cone, and cap. That's all you really need. I appreciate the extreme length some vendors go to, but when half of them sound exactly like the one next to them, then those individual impulse responses aren't very valuable and are just taking up space, especially when the difference can be made up for with a simple passive EQ or just interpolated between another pair of impulse responses. So you won't find that clutter here, which is something I do honestly appreciate. Going forward, if the release schedule kind of keeps up the way it has been, I would like to see some more oddballs throughout here. Certainly won't be against seeing OTTO Audio's approach applied to other common cabinets, of course. But I think the world has enough of certain common amplifier and cabinet combinations. So I would love to see things that aren't super easy to get your hands on, whether it be a brand that most people aren't familiar with, or maybe something like a vintage orange Mad Amp style cabinet, stuff that fits within that nastier side of heavy guitar playing. If it can be fit in here, and especially if it pairs well with 1111 or indeed any modeling gear or tube amplifier, then I don't see how it could hurt. So I'm pretty impressed. I got to be honest. This isn't, you know, shill hour here. If I did not already own these, having heard them now, I would absolutely be buying that one and at least the base Ampeg inspired stuff if it was sold separately, which I've asked for it to be. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. And personally, very much looking forward to the Fat Botto, which you might know what it is. I really want that cab in real life. So looking forward to that one, as well as whatever else OTTO Audio decides to release as I continue to have good experiences with everything I've tried so far. It seems like it's a labor of love for all things heavy guitar and not cynical nonsense, which I think we need more of in this industry. And all my dealings with them through email and various communications have been nothing but pleasant. And it seems like it's a, you know, an effort that's stemming from just being stoked about the whole industry and guitar playing in general, and not just trying to make a quick and easy buck. I don't think if that was the case, we would be seeing, you know, the trial and error and various different combinations of microphones and all this stuff that led to the creation of these anyway. I also hope to check out their most recent release in probably several months realistically, but there's some thorough testing I want to put that through to make that a worthwhile video. So we'll see later down the road. Any other questions and comments, as always, please leave them down below. Thank you so very much for watching. And once again, thanks to OTTO Audio for the review samples and the discount code for everybody watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.